I know I took it degrees farther than like my mom and my parents. And so then we have to kind of come back to the compassion and grace for ourselves. Like anything that we're doing that's putting some consciousness toward is great. Like I still also honor my journey and know I gave my kids, a certain model that I didn't have that I hope they can build on. Right. And I know, and like when you're talking about like healing generations and that it was my husband and our hope that, we would, create an environment that they could see more than we could and, hope that they can take it even farther. And we have to have that compassion and grace for ourselves. Otherwise, we don't want what I'm addressing and this opportunity to feel like, oh, another thing I just didn't do well, as a mom, as opposed to like, wow, any moments of that, cool. Like that'll add to my experience.
You're really kind of like talking about, I think, like shifting the lens, right? Of like when we shift ourselves, like we are the lens like through which we see everything, like we think I think about that with the mind, right? The mind is like every single sense organ goes through our mind and our consciousness and we're interpreters, right?
Yeah.
And when we can start to train our minds, understand ourselves, build that self-awareness muscle, we're less like in the stream of the reactivity, the constricting parts of our culture. We're less like we're less believing these things that may be limiting us, and we're able to then kind of what you're describing to me reminds me of being able to sort of step back and look at it and say, okay, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. It's about being able to make conscious choices rather than being swept along by just the culture at large. How do we start that work of stepping into that place of conscious perspective and choice?
Sure. Yeah. And, so even in kind of my intro talks where, women maybe are just hearing this for the first time, like, a first step I invite, women to is, do an initial inventory, um, what did I, what did I like about how I was mothered? What didn't I
Mm,
like?
mhm,
Just to start raising that awareness, what do I see in the culture of mothering that, I agree with or like, and what don't I? And just that first step of like looking at that, I can say like, oh, I have choice here. I
mm,
want women immediately like, to reflect for themselves, and so, I call it like, what is in, what is your mother code? What are you aware of in this moment that, are the push and pulls, and what do I like, what I don't like? Cause it kind of floats around in there. But the more we can, you know, look at it, then we can make initial choices. And then a first step is then writing out of that, like, oh, here's what I like, what I don't like. Now, what's a vision for myself out of that?
mm,
What do I then see? What's a possibility that I see for myself as a mother? What's my vision for myself? And when I say mother, that could be at anywhere on the continuum of what we mother. Um, and that's a beautiful place to start, right? And then from there, then it kind of becomes a little bit more individualized. But if you get that far, you know that's a huge beautiful start, because then when we're there, then we can see like, oh, okay, so then what's some of the work I need to do? We can
mm.
identify, things like you may have identified aspects that I didn't like about my mothering, and that may be, going back and doing some work to heal wounds that we had from our parenting, our
Mm.
mothering, or it might mean, looking at the culture and doing some studying about it. So I personally then identify, for women in that, like, what would be some good next steps for you, and you got to just break it down. We It's something I love about how we operate at the Right Foundation is assignment way of living. You have to put things into action, right? So it might be maybe feelings were muted. They're muted in some level, our emotions, and getting in touch with my emotions now is a big piece of what I need to work on. And so what are small steps I can take to get reacquainted with my emotions? So, those are examples. If
Mm.
if
Mhm.
if
Okay, okay, so decide what you want and you don't want. So it sounds like you
Mhm.
could do some journaling. This could be a
Yep.
conversation with friends, it could be a lot of different things. Decide what you like and what you don't like and start to make some decisions about what's important to you. So really consciously choose those values and then start to say, what do I want? What do I need to work towards? Okay. So that's kind of
Mhm.
giving us this framework. I love this because what you're describing, what we don't see, we're going to just pass along, right?
Exactly.
What we don't transform, we transmit, right? Like we pass that along. And so you're inviting, and so even if, dear listener, your motivation is only for my kids, what we don't transform, we transmit, right? So if you if you don't do the work of starting to maybe heal some old wounds and look at some of these things, then you're passing the buck, you could say, right? Down to the
Yeah.
next generation, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. And then, you're on your journey, right? And then your mothering can be like, we're growing ourselves up together, right? Now I
Mm,
don't, out of that, and that can be part of your vision, right? It's part of my vision that I'm going to, grow myself up with my kids. This is as I'm giving my kids things that I never got, I can put myself next to them. So then it isn't so selfless either,
mm,
that's another one of those selling points. Like, you can still give your kids stuff. You just have to put yourself in the picture. So when you're providing for them in a way that you weren't provided for, that you put little Hunter, like, whatever age, you're really parenting two children right there, little you and them. And that's another, framework or, day-to-day visualization we can do that puts us in the picture. And that's
mm.
another really important one.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Ianla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.